Merodach, which is Merodach, which is a Babylonian idol, which was of an ancient god. Hebrew word H4781, translated as MRADK, energy, person, first to enter lotus. Now, lotus was a sacred plant. It was a water lily. And what was seen as so sacred about the lotus was that it died. It submerged itself for 3 days in the water and then reemerged and blossomed. That's what was seen so sacred about the lotus. This is a symbolic thing that we have seen before in other writings, such as the story of Jesus and his dying on the cross and rising 3 days later. It is the same concept. This is the concept of Merodach. Now, Merodach is found... let me continue on. Merodach was also a Babylonian king, known as Merodach Baladan. And Merodach Baladan would be translated as... Now, excuse me, I gotta find this first. Got my computer running at the same time here. Gotta find that. Okay, Hebrew. Back up a little here. Sorry about that. I wasn't ready for this part. Merodach. Merodach. H5781. Compare it to H4757. Here we go. H4757. Merodach Baladan, a foreign derivation, a Babylonian king. And then it references back to compared to H4781. But the Babylonian king, Merodach Baladan, would have a meaning of energy, person, first to enter lotus. Household leader, first to enter death. That was the king, which had been different than the idol of Merodach. Now, as we see, this king was the household leader, first to enter death. Now, how would we take death in this? Well, we could take it into different ways. Now, one way of understanding it would be as the energy person first to enter lotus, that the household leader first to enter death, that this king had died and was risen. Maybe the king did not rise. Maybe it was just the story of the god of the lotus, but the king actually didn't make it through it. He actually died. But there's another way of looking at that, and the way that people had looked at death, and that death was something that happened during a time of sleep. This person may have been put to sleep for 3 days. Who knows? There's lots of possibilities here. I just want to give you and share with you this information. Well, this name Merodach is only shows up once in the scriptures in Jeremiah 50 verse 2. And in Jeremiah 50 verse 2, it is written, "Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard, publish, conceal not." And then it states, "Say, Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces, her idols are confounded, her images are broken in pieces." Now, if you were to take that today and tell people that, would it tell them much of anything? Not a lot. But if you were to take that and translate it using the ancient pictographs going way back, which would be the time of Merodach, the Merodach god, and maybe even the Merodach, when the idol was formed. But we'll start with the word say. Say, which is translated from H559 and would translate as first energy person. Babylon, which is H894, which is translated as in household tongue. Is taken, which is H3920, lead, lotus, entrance. Bell, which is H1078, translated as in tongue. Is confounded, which is H3001, to make into truth. Merodach, which is H4781, energy person, to enter lotus. Broken to pieces, which is H2844, to separate completely. Her idols, which is H6091, which translate as watch, direction, household. Are confounded, which is H3001, to make into truth. Her images, which is H1544, pit tongue against tongue. Are broken, which is H2865, to separate covenant completely. Now I'm going to read this translation through. I'm going to start with reading the scripture, and then I'll finish it off reading the translation. Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard. Publish, conceal not. This is supposed to have to do with setting up a standard, and this is something that's supposed to be put out for people to see. And we start with, first, energy person, in household tongue, lead, the lotus, entrance, in tongue, to make into truth, energy person, to enter lotus, to complete, to separate completely, watch, direction, household, to make into truth, pit tongue against tongue, to separate covenant completely. Now what can we get out of this translation? Well, we can get that there's supposed to be a leading of an energy person, and using a household tongue, which would be the tongue that a person would be able to relate to lead the lotus entrance. The lotus, that is the time of death and rebirth, okay? It's about all this talk that you've read about in the Bible about ye must be born again. You are to lead that lotus entrance, the entrance to being born again. Okay? In tongue, in what you say and what you speak, to make it into truth. In other words, take all these things that are untruths and correct them into truths, just like I'm doing here by translating using the old translation. That is what is supposed to be done, to bring out the truth. Energy person, to enter the lotus. That means the energy person is supposed to also be reborn in these things that are being spoken about. To separate completely, watch, direction, household. Watch the direction of the households. Make sure that you separate from these other households that are not in truth. To make into truth, pit tongue against tongue. That means challenge. That means test. To separate covenant completely. That is to separate the covenant, the spoken covenant, the promises. The promises people have made in ignorance must be separated completely because they did not have the truth. And that has to be separated from. It has to be distanced from. I apologize for the quality of this video as I'm having trouble with my recorder.